Beautiful people, Leonardo. Thank you for being here, everyone. The next session is Prepare for Culture Evolution. I believe this is a joint brand lovely team effort. So I'm going to hand over to Chantal, Tess, Marilee, and I see Clinton as well. Go ahead, take it away, team. Oh, by the way, how's our leaderboard looking?
Oh, I haven't checked lately. I can check. Wait, let me check.
Cool. Let's see.
It's a lot of fun to check this leaderboard.
Johan, you freak me out with that heartbeat.
It freaks
Tatiana, and then Patricia has ousted almost everyone on the leaderboard. So it's Tatiana at the top, Patricia short behind her, then Mia, then Michael. Well done, guys.
Well done.
And you've been collecting those certificates. So literally, for everyone that's catching up, this is what you will get at the end of every session. You will get a certificate that looks like that. And you can share that certificate and get a PDF download of the certificate. All right, fantastic. So let me see if I can get that presentation up. All right, so we're going to be talking about culture. I want to share a few things with you. I'm going to share a few presentation slides with you. I want to talk you through a great culture framework. And then we are going to have some breakout rooms where we come up with some practical solutions for evolving our cultures to the next frontier. All right, so let me quickly see. There we go. I think that's the way to do it. I just want to make sure I can still see you on my screens. And then, all right. So I want to take you through a few questions. Let's just do a quick assessment. You're going to go to ahaslides.com and your code is CXDayCult, or you can grab that link from the chat. And the first question I want to pose to you is, what does your organization's culture make you feel like? How do you feel when you think about your organization's culture? All right, and we have some awesome things coming up there. Appreciated, proud, valued. All right, let's get some more people on there. Sense of belonging. Amazing, amazing. Let's see if we can get a few more answers there. Appreciated, hopeful, bureaucracy. There's always the sweet and the sour, the light and the dark. Slow. Yeah, successful to customer experience management. All right, fantastic. So let's move to the next question. What are some of the culture challenges that your company faces? What are some of the challenges that you face? My colleague Marley talks about silos in organizations. She calls it silocytis. Company has silocytis. Lack of clarity, risk averse, they're stuck in their old way, changes in leadership that don't have the same views on company culture, old mental models, old calibers running the business in an old way. Yeah, somehow people have gotten stuck a bit, right? All right. So now I want us to just ponder for a moment, what was the impact of COVID on your company culture? And if no impact, just looking around you, what do you think in general the impact of COVID has been on company culture. Has it been good? Has it been bad? Yeah, so some companies were facing huge layoffs. The toxic nature of cultures have come to the fore. People are forced to innovate. Yeah, being remote and not having face-to-face has created big challenges. Difficulty to maintaining the culture when you're working remotely. The growth in the customer base, but less manpower, lots of fear. Yeah, people are disconnected, downsizing, so morale is low. Avoid talking to one another. Quick gains in technology. Mixed impact, it brought us together and forced us to be creative. Yeah, fear of losing jobs. So what we've heard in the groups, and we work with typically teams in large corporates, and what we've heard people say is some of them love working from home because they don't have to put up with people's shit in the office. So for them, it's an escape. So they don't have to be part of the culture. And for some people, they say like the cultural fault lines were exaggerated. All of a sudden, you could see how poorly people communicate because now they just had digital means. They didn't have any of the body language or the face-to-face communication, and it just elevated what was already quite vulnerable and what was already quite breakable. All right. So let's get a little bit of aspirational now that we've looked at some of those challenges. How would you describe the ideal culture that you want? What is the workplace that you want to work in? How would you, if you could just very concisely say, the place I want to work in is, and give it some characteristics, what would you want to put in that cultural DNA? So it must be supportive, innovative, passionate, person-centric. Must be honest, open, supportive, collaborative. Encourage risk-taking and accept failure. A strong sense of connection amongst employees and customers, not us versus them. Embrace the idea of a creative powerhouse. Help employees grow fast, help employees to express themselves, allow them to experiment and innovate. All connected and working around the client, sufficient manpower to provide ample time for excellent output, transparency, positive, supportive, innovative, conscious, heart-led, meaningful relationships with humility to encourage curiosity and innovation. Empowering, engaging. I just love this. I feel just this internal calm just thinking about a workplace where everyone creates that. All right, so for a moment, let me just quickly see. So let's quickly get some ideas of how do you go about creating a healthy culture in a team? What are some of the things that you're doing as a leader, or some of the things that you want to do that you want your leaders to do? Let's just get some ideas here. We're going to get very practical later in this session, but just to get some ideas on where would you start? What would you do to start evolving your culture, to transform that culture, cure the sinusitis? So I'm seeing that the leaders need to go first. They need to demonstrate the culture. They need to live the culture that they want to promote. Empathy, listening, build transparency and enable people to ask for help, make it cool to fail and learn from, top-down transparency, communicate shared vision, understand your team's strengths, become ambassadors of inclusive, equitable cultures to cultivate self-leadership, listen to the team and have an openness as opposed to a top-down approach, co-create the culture, accept feedback, accountability, motivating listening, transparency, and communication. Be open to creative input from your fellow people. Let them expand their inspirational and cut off their smile, listening, shared vision, communicate feedback. Become employee-centric, align employee goals with company goals. All right, colleagues, thank you for sharing that. So I went on a quest early in 2020, and when the world went into lockdown, I found myself on a flight back from New York City after I visited the Ritz-Carlton and Zappos. And this quest of mine was to really experience the culture, to have a look at, you know, we've been admiring these brands forever, and I wanted to see, is it real? What are they doing? What's the recipe? Is it real? And I had a variety of experiences with both of these brands, and they're very, very different. So I'm going to share with you a bit of you know, how I see culture, and share a bit of the stories that I was exposed to. So, you know, culture for me is very much around the unspoken behaviors. It's about the mindsets. It's about the social patterns. It's less about the written rules and the written posters on the wall. So the ingredients of culture, I think, is around the values and how those values were originally created. Also the company goals, the ethics, the behavior that's tolerated, and the behavior that's not addressed is sometimes more important than, you know, the behaviors that's defined. It's also about people conviction. I look at some of the teams I've worked in, and some of what I found in those teams were a similarity of how our core philosophies and how we live life. And sometimes the people conviction, people attract similar people to themselves. And then it's about the practices and the rituals. I often say, you know, culture is similar to working out. I might be driving around with my exercise clothes in my car, but I actually never put it on, and I never go and exercise. You know, that means that I'm actually not nurturing my health and my vitality. But it's still cool to drive around with my gym bag in my car. I still have that, like, a little bit less guilt if I do that, right? But I'm not actually practicing it. So, you know, we look at a lot of companies that are struggling with culture issues and with some of these challenges that you've put on the board. They are not managing their culture. My good friend Eric, he says he uses the analogy of a carpenter that drives nails in wood versus a gardener that tends to a garden, that weeds the garden, that feeds the garden. And very often these challenges emerge when a company's culture is not managed. It's not nurtured. It's not prioritized in the same way as what the strategy or the KPIs or the objectives are managed. And I think that's true for both Ritz-Carlton and Zappos. They have these cycles. As they go into business planning and budgeting and strategizing, the culture is always at the fore. The culture is always on the agenda. Culture gets discussed in nearly every meeting. So it's topical, it's nurtured every day, if not more frequently than every day. So if we look at the enemies of culture, I think what we're seeing, and certainly since COVID, is just a lot of fear. We've had so many leaders come to us saying, listen, I had no idea what I was doing before COVID. Now I even have less of a clue. I'm just not, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel a bit like an imposter. None of my strategies are working. And some of that fear, has driven people to actually get help, to get coaching, to get support. Then there's the bad habits that are just entrenched in an organization. I'll never forget, I joined an asset manager. And I mean, asset managers are notorious for being like cutthroat. And I'll never forget, I used to have this experiment where I would get into an elevator with a whole lot of people, and I would crack a joke or I'll greet people. And one day, one of the fund managers turned around and he said, "You knew, right?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't worry, it'll wear off eventually." And I thought that's one of those things that, I'm a bundle of joy. I'm a new broom in this environment. And he said, like, bad habits, don't talk to people in the lifts, just get on with it. And then there's the fear of actually speaking up, where people don't speak up. Now, if you follow Amy Edmondson and all of the work that she's done around psychological safety, and you look at specifically some of the major aircraft disasters were related to people not speaking up. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't speak up. All right, so if we look at the friends of culture, it's about connection with each other. It's about supporting each other. It's about building these bridges and getting a deeper understanding of each other. So if we look at some of the culture clues in an environment, what's the frequency of communication? What's the quality of communication? What are people's manners? Do they arrive on time for meetings? Do they allow each other to finish what they're saying? Emotions, are all emotions welcome at work? Do people even speak about emotions? We used to say, like in some of these big corporates that we've worked with, when you swipe your card at the turnstile, you need to leave the messy emotions on the outside, and then you can pick them up again when you leave. But inside, we need to be a certain way, and we don't want messy emotions. The issue with that is those suppressed emotions bleed into everything that we do. So what you'll see my team do often is we have this emotions checking. How do you feel today? And the reason why we do that is if we arrive and we're feeling anxious, it's better to say it, because that actually makes the emotion, it just makes the person actually feel better if they can share that. If they don't share that, we all feel that there's a vibe, and we all think that it's about me. It's obviously I did something, or someone did something, rather than saying, listen, I'm really feeling anxious. I'm waiting for doctor's results, or I'm feeling anxious. This is my story. So those stories often have this ripple effect on the culture that we feel. Do colleagues socialize with each other? What are some of the leadership styles? And I think leadership styles are very much under pressure. You said it in some of those comments about, some of the old ways, some of the old patterns, some of the command and control, do what I say and meet your targets and everything will be all right. All right, so let's look at some of the really, really important skills around culture. And that's why, we chose this basket for you today in the Skills Fest, is around communication. How do we communicate with each other? Can we practice empathy? And empathy is a skill that's taught. You can teach empathy, and we practice our empathy skills every day with each other. And then self-awareness, just becoming much more aware of what's happening in yourself. So some of the great habits that we teach our clients, that we promote in literally every team that we work with, is, how do we connect with each other? Do we create time and space to connect with each other? How do we communicate with each other? How do we practice gratitude? Arshad so beautifully, I literally got goosebumps when he said, thank you for being with us today. You are allowing us to give you a gift of our skills and our knowledge. And, in return, we get just a sense of fulfillment, and your smiles make such a difference to our day. I'm having so much fun today. Celebration, how do we celebrate? And even celebrate the failures. If we go into a culture of experimentation, we also need to celebrate those failures. acceptance. How do we practice acceptance with each other? How do we contract expectations? Because sometimes there's a lot of assumptions going on. And Marley, how many of the things you assume is actually true?
About 80% is wrong.
It's wrong. 80% of the assumptions you make is wrong, just roughly. All right. And then how do we practice courage? And I'm not suggesting you all need to go and lie in front of a digger that's digging up a beachfront. If you want to help me, I mean, send me an email if you want to volunteer, because I'm not finished with those guys yet. But I think courage comes, I always thought courage is like being brave with one big thing. But you know what? Sometimes courage comes in really small doses. Sometimes I need to be courageous a few times in an hour, not to be impatient, not to lose my cool over something, not to just do a one-liner to that email saying WTF ? So I think courage sometimes comes in really small doses. And then authenticity. So the secret to a great culture is having a really, really clear purpose, having an aspirational purpose, really caring, and then equipping people with the tools, whether that is skills or whether it is technology, or whether it is the processes that you have, the rules that you have in your organization. Johan's just checking my sound. How's my sound sounding, people?
It sounds crisp. It's good.
My sound all right? All right. Great. So one of the words that I learned from Zappos is this brand aura. And the brand aura is kind of this distinctive atmosphere or quality that surrounds and be generated by a person, a thing, or a place. And that's very similar to where we started today with the essence, saying, what is your essence? What's your secret sauce? What is this thing that will inspire your most junior person to live the experience? And that's really where we started today. And once you've got that essence, the idea is then to pour that literally into everything that you do. So I want to quickly share with you a culture framework that we recently started using. And then we are going to go into some breakout rooms. So this is the work of Spencer Stewart, and they call this the integrated culture framework. And it positions various dimensions of the culture in terms of how people interact with each other on this axis. I'm just going to grab a pen so I can show you. So how people interact on this axis and how people respond to change on that axis. So if we look at here, we've got independence, and here we've got interdependence. And then here they've got stability and they've got flexibility. And they have a questionnaire that kind of helps you peg where you're at. And then in these quadrants, they position, if we look at independence and stability, there's a culture of authority and results. On this quadrant, if it's stability and interdependence, there's safety and order. And then if we move to this top flexibility quadrant, there's purpose and caring and learning and enjoyment. And this almost works like a little bit like a wheel with spokes. So, if we look at a bank, a bank is probably very high on safety, authority, results, and order. Do I necessarily want to bank with a bank that has massive enjoyment? Maybe a little bit less, and learning and purpose. So all organizations have these things. All right, it's just the dose in which they have them, and there's advantages and disadvantages that comes with each of these. But this is quite a interesting framework to let leaders identify where they're at and where they want to be. And if they say, listen, we want to have a lot of purpose and caring, then they need to start practicing that in the ways that they interact with each other. And it's quite difficult to go from results and authority straight to purpose and caring. For these quadrants to cross over, that doesn't work so well. You've kind of got to go on a journey to say, all right, we've got to become a learning organization, then we can become more self-aware, and then, you know, we can learn the skills, you know, how to prioritize purpose and how to infuse caring into the way we do things. So this is a really interesting model. And what we'll do is in the Brand Love Academy, where you'll find this recording, we will make sure that we drop this framework and a link to some of these documents, so you can go and read up on culture, should you wish to do that. All right, so quite interesting. Culture is not just fluffy stuff, it's like a real science, and it requires real work and ownership by the leaders and, you know, every team member to often, when we were doing a lot of face-to-face workshops, we would say to people, okay, what are your 3 personal values? And a lot of that, oh, Tshegoe, we did this with you guys at your annual team build. We did this with Tshegoe's team, and we asked them, you know, what's your personal values? And then we would tape people together with some masking tape and say to them, okay, so what are the things that's holding you back from protecting those values? Because often it's not about the values. Everybody most people show up and they want to do some great epic stuff in the world. And then things get in the way and they get afraid. And that's why often they wouldn't speak up. You know, they just don't feel safe enough. So, you know, if I see, you know, someone stepping out of their integrity, I just let it slide. And the next person lets it slide. And the next person lets it slide. And it's often not about the actual integrity issue. It's about the skills to address that, the skills to hold someone accountable, the skills to raise it in a kind way that, you know, keeps me in my integrity. And often people just stay quiet because they don't want to elicit conflict. All right, so let me just quickly check with my team. I'm seeing a lot of smiles, Marley. I'm seeing some smiles there. All right, so we thought with this backdrop, we are going to let you choose. We are going to let you choose a breakout room that you would like to go to. And what we're going to ask you to do in this breakout room, let me just quickly check with my team. This is what we're doing, right?
Yep, that's correct. We're going to go to breakouts. We have about 18 minutes.
All right, so we're going to create 4 breakout rooms. All right. And we are going to let you choose which breakout room you want to go to. And in this breakout room, I want you to keep that culture that you painted, the ideal culture of being so supportive, of, you know, having the freedom to experiment. And in this breakout room, you are going to talk about how to infuse those aspects into these very, very practical ways of engaging with each other. All right, so while I'm setting up these breakout rooms, Marilee, can I ask you to share what these breakout rooms will be? And maybe for my team, just to give a quick overview of each of these aspects.
All right, so we're going to do some of the elements that you also actually highlighted when we asked for your ideal journey or your ideal culture. The first one, I think, is feedback. So what is the, you know, the rituals and the things that needs to happen in terms of feedback, right? Then my team must help me, but I think the other one that a lot of us are dealing with these days are meetings, right? And I don't know about you, but how many of you have back-to-back meetings? And what is the impact of those back-to-back meetings on you? It's hectic, right? In actual fact, there's some research done that it actually affects your brain. It shrinks your brain, right? So just a 10-minute break will actually make a huge difference. Let me just hear, there's 2 others.
If we have decision-making and communication.
There we go. Decision-making. How do we decide on different things, and what is the practical things we can do to get better decision making. And I think somebody spoke about transparency and getting more information through to other people. And then communication. Like, how do we communicate now? I mean, communicating is now happening on WhatsApp at 10 o'clock at night, or meeting requests sent out at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then suddenly people just need to react to that. So what is the practical things we can do in these areas to really build in that culture of excellence that we want to see? Because if we don't have the behaviors and the rituals and the habits in place, it's just gonna it's never going to happen. So we need your guidance and your input to create some amazing practical ideas and actions around these things.
Marilee, if I may jump in terms of communication, what's also interesting is the language and the quality that we use to communicate internally. I just told this team of interesting flights that I was on recently, and these two colleagues were speaking behind the scenes, and they didn't understand what was happening in their business. They're like, what does this mean? You know, so when it comes to communication, it's not just the frequency, but what quality, what quality was the level of quality that we are communicating at.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. And also, are we checking in with each other, or are we making a lot of assumptions? We're coming back to that assumptions thing that we were speaking about earlier. Chantal, are you ready for action?
All right. Fantastic. I'm ready for action. So what I'm going to ask my Brand Love facilitators to do, Tess, if you can head over to the meetings room and share with people a little bit of, you know, what happens with your brain in meetings. Let's look at some practical things to align these things to the values, to the culture that you painted. And let's come back with, you know, 2 or 3 very practical things that we can do to make feedback much better, to make feedback a part of our culture, to, you know, have this culture of, you know, better meetings, more values aligned decision making, and, you know, improved communication. So colleagues, you can choose which breakout room, which topic you want to join. And if I can have Tess in meetings, Marilee in feedback, decision making, I've got, is Clinton still around? Clinton, yes. Clinton, if you can go to decision making, Johan, you can join Tess in the meetings room, and then Marilee and I can go to communication. And Arshad, you can join anyone that you want. Okay, so I'm going to open the rooms. Please feel free to join the room of the topic that you are most interested in, and then we will be back here in 10 minutes with some very practical ideas. All right, I'm going to open the rooms. Feel free to choose. Clinton, are you able to choose the decision-making group? Okay. Arshad, do you want to give Clinton some backup in the decision-making group?
Sure. Are you gonna? I was wondering if I should hang around here, or are you gonna go to a group as well? Then I can wait here.
I'll go to the communication group. I think the people that haven't chosen the groups are possibly not there at the moment, so that shouldn't be like I don't think that's a massive issue.
Right. Sure.